Welcome to our video on the 10 worst foods to avoid if you have an autoimmune disease. Normally, the immune system defends the body against infections and diseases. But when you have an autoimmune disease, the immune system malfunctions and produces antibodies that target the body's own organs and systems. There are many different types of autoimmune diseases. Some of the more common ones include rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, and psoriasis. If you have an autoimmune disease, your diet can play a significant role in managing symptoms and reducing inflammation in the body. While there is no one-size-fits-all approach, certain foods have been identified as potential triggers for autoimmune flare-ups and may be best avoided. Before we begin our countdown, please do us a huge favour. Click the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel to help us reach more people, and ring the bell icon to get notified when our latest video comes up. Now, let's start our countdown of the 10 worst foods to avoid if you have an autoimmune disease. Number 10. Nightshade vegetables. Nightshade vegetables are a popular staple in many diets worldwide. This vegetable family includes favourites like tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, peppers, goji berries, and more. But if you have an autoimmune disease, you may benefit from avoiding these. The name itself has the word vegetable in it, so you may think, why is it so bad for you? Aren't vegetables supposed to be healthy? Well, a 2023 study found that compounds in nightshades called glycoalkaloids and lectins may increase intestinal inflammation and permeability in susceptible individuals. Many people with autoimmune conditions report symptom improvement when eliminating nightshades. If you think this is also a trigger for you, it may be worth experimenting with removing them from the diet to see if symptoms improve. An elimination diet done with guidance from a doctor or dietitian can help identify potential food triggers. It is important to note that although they can be triggers, nightshades are also still very nutritious. Tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants are rich in vitamins, minerals, fibre, and antioxidants. Removing them long-term could impact nutrition if not replaced with equally nutrient-dense foods. So work closely with your doctor to determine if you should actually remove nightshades from your diet or limit them. Number 9. High omega-6 oils. Omega-6 fatty acids, while essential, can promote inflammation when consumed in excess compared to omega-3s. These fatty acids are common in processed oils used in cooking and fast foods. So, why does it matter if your diet is high in omega-6? It matters because omega-6 are precursors to pro-inflammatory compounds in the body called eicosanoids. Having too many omega-6s compared to omega-3s promotes chronic low-grade inflammation. In contrast, omega-3s from fish and shellfish are converted into anti-inflammatory compounds that calm the immune system. To manage autoimmune conditions, it's important to decrease omega-6 intake and increase omega-3 consumption. Oils high in omega-6s include soybean, corn, sunflower, safflower, cottonseed, grapeseed, canola, and peanut oils. Instead of these, you can opt for flaxseed oil, olive oil, avocado oil, walnut oil, and coconut oil. Of course, like with everything, moderation is key. Keep in mind that oils are high in calories and consuming too much can lead to weight gain and other health issues. Number 8. Salt. To put it simply, a high-salt diet is not recommended for people who suffer from autoimmune diseases. Excess dietary salt appears to have a pro-inflammatory effect on the immune system. In a 2022 study that looked at the modulatory effect of high salt on immune cells and related diseases, researchers discovered that high-salt conditions can influence the differentiation and function of several types of immune cells, pushing them towards a more inflammatory phenotype. Animal studies have also demonstrated that a high-salt diet can exacerbate autoimmune conditions like multiple sclerosis, arthritis, and inflammatory bowel disease. And while large-scale clinical studies are still limited, some epidemiological evidence suggests a link between high-salt intake and an increased risk of autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis in humans. If you have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, or if you suspect that you have one, it may be a good idea to limit your salt intake and see how it affects your condition. A low-salt diet is also beneficial for people with other health conditions, including hypertension. Discuss going on a low-salt diet with your doctor. You can also keep a diary of your symptoms. Number 7. Alcohol. The relationship between alcohol and autoimmune diseases is complex. While moderate alcohol consumption may offer some protective effects against autoimmune diseases, excessive intake can be detrimental. Alcohol disrupts the immune system, leading to a leaky gut that allows harmful substances to enter the bloodstream and trigger inflammation, which is particularly concerning for autoimmune conditions characterized by an overactive immune response. Even moderate drinking can significantly impact symptoms, and alcohol metabolism produces harmful compounds like acetaldehyde that potentially increase inflammation. A study published in the journal Clinical Gastroenterology and Hepatology found that alcoholic cirrhosis, a severe consequence of chronic excessive alcohol consumption, was associated with an increased incidence of several autoimmune disorders, including Addison's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, pernicious anemia, and psoriasis. At the end of the day, the effect of alcohol is highly individual. Some may tolerate an occasional glass of wine. For others, total abstinence may be best. In general, when it comes to alcohol and autoimmunity, it's wise to err on the side of restraint. Your immune system has enough on its plate as it is. Next up on the list is number 6, dairy products. Dairy is a staple of most diets, but if you have an autoimmune disease, you may benefit from limiting or eliminating it from your diet altogether. Specific milk proteins, like casein and whey, can increase inflammation and contribute to leaky gut syndrome. A leaky gut allows harmful substances to cross the intestinal barrier, potentially triggering immune responses. A 2018 review in Frontiers in Psychiatry found that casein and whey can mimic gluten, damaging gut-tight junctions. It also noted that dairy may contain hormones and antibiotics that exacerbate autoimmune diseases. Additionally, early exposure to cow's milk has been linked to an increased risk of developing autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes. That said, the connection between dairy and autoimmunity is still controversial. Ultimately, the effects of dairy likely depend on the specific autoimmune condition and the individual. Some people may be more sensitive to potential antigenic or inflammatory effects. Many autoimmune diets recommend at least temporarily removing dairy during an elimination phase to identify potential trigger foods. However, it's important to work with a doctor or dietitian, as completely cutting out food groups may lead to nutrient deficiencies. If tolerated, dairy can still be a nutritious part of a balanced diet for many people with autoimmune diseases. This next item is a must-have for most people, but it can also be problematic if you have an autoimmune disease. Number 5, coffee. If you love your morning cuppa, you may have some trouble eliminating it from your diet, but if you have an autoimmune disorder, it may be something you need to seriously consider. Like with alcohol, the relationship between coffee and autoimmune diseases is complex. A 2017 study published in Autoimmunity Reviews investigated the association between coffee intake and various autoimmune diseases. They determined that coffee consumption seems to increase the risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis and type 1 diabetes, but in contrast, coffee consumption may have a protective role against multiple sclerosis, primary sclerosing cholangitis, and ulcerative colitis. Ultimately, the effects of coffee on autoimmunity seem to vary by individual. Many autoimmune diets recommend initially eliminating coffee during an elimination phase, then carefully reintroducing it to assess tolerance. As always, it's best to work with your doctor to determine if coffee fits into your autoimmune management plan. Number 4. Eggs. When was the last time you had eggs? Did you notice a flare-up in your symptoms afterward? While eggs are a nutritious food, some studies suggest they may trigger inflammation in certain individuals with autoimmune diseases. A 2012 study published in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences on the effect of eggs and fish on people who have multiple sclerosis noted that patients who have demonstrated allergies to fish and eggs may benefit from eliminating or minimizing them from their diets. Additionally, a 2015 review in Nutrients called Bioactive Egg Components and Inflammation discussed how eggs contain a variety of compounds that can influence pro- and anti-inflammatory pathways. So there is indeed some evidence that eggs may be an autoimmune disease trigger. In fact, some autoimmune diets, like the Autoimmune Protocol or AIP, recommend initially eliminating eggs as a potential trigger food. Like with the other food items listed here, reactions are likely individual. Before you eliminate eggs from your diet completely, consult with your doctor first. We're down to our top 3. And if you have already done some research on foods that can trigger an autoimmune response, you won't be surprised with Number 3. Gluten-containing grains. The gluten-free craze has taken over social media and the rest of the world, and for good reason. Gluten-containing grains like wheat, barley and rye are often not recommended for people with autoimmune diseases because gluten can trigger an inflammatory immune response in some individuals. A 2018 review article in Autoimmunity Reviews titled Celiac Disease Autoimmunity explains that celiac disease is an autoimmune condition activated by gluten ingestion, leading to damage to the small intestine lining. But it's not just those with celiac disease who may need to watch out for gluten. There is also emerging evidence that a gluten-free diet may offer benefits for people with other autoimmune disorders like type 1 diabetes, autoimmune thyroid disease and rheumatoid arthritis. The thinking is that gluten may increase intestinal permeability or leaky gut, allowing troublesome compounds to enter the bloodstream and provoke inflammation. So, while not everyone with an autoimmune condition needs to avoid gluten, it's worth discussing with your doctor whether a gluten-free trial might be helpful based on your specific diagnosis and symptoms. Keeping a food and symptom journal can help determine if gluten-containing grains seem to worsen your autoimmune issues. Number 2. Added sugars. We've known for a while now that too much sugar in the diet causes a lot of problems, including obesity and type 2 diabetes. But there is also some evidence that sugars can lead to problems with inflammation, which can exacerbate autoimmune issues. A 2022 review in Frontiers in Immunology titled Excessive Intake of Sugar, an Accomplice of Inflammation, found that high sugar diets are closely tied to chronic inflammation and autoimmune conditions. The study explains that sugar disrupts gut bacteria balance and activates inflammatory pathways. This is supported by a 2020 study in Nutrients called Dietary Intake of Free Sugars is Associated with Disease Activity of Systemic Lupus Erythematosus, which discovered that lupus patients consuming more added sugars had higher disease activity scores. Additionally, a 2020 study published in Arthritis and Rheumatology found that higher intakes of carbohydrates and free sugars were associated with increased disease activity in patients with axial spondyloarthritis. While more human trials are needed, the current evidence suggests limiting added sugars may help control inflammation and manage autoimmune symptoms. If you notice flare-ups in your autoimmune symptoms when you take excessive sugar, it may be worth trying to eliminate it from your diet. For personalized guidance, consult with your doctor or a dietitian. We're now at the top 1 worst food for autoimmune diseases. Can you guess what it is? Number 1. Processed and fast foods. Processed foods and fast foods are generally considered bad for you. Yes, they provide calories, but they often lack nutrition and fiber content. They also tend to be very high in added sugars and omega-6, and we've already discussed how these two can be bad for people who have autoimmune conditions. In addition, a 2015 review in Autoimmunity Reviews found that these foods can weaken the intestinal barrier, allowing bacteria and toxins to sneak through and trigger inflammation. Not good when your immune system is already in overdrive. The review noted that common additives in processed foods, like emulsifiers, gluten, and nanoparticles, can be particularly problematic too. Another study from 2022 in Frontiers in Nutrition linked the Western diet, high in processed junk food, to increased autoimmune disease prevalence worldwide. Animal studies also show that fast food diets can exacerbate autoimmune conditions by altering gut bacteria and ramping up inflammatory immune cells. Avoid these when you can and instead opt for whole, unprocessed foods. You can still have processed foods and fast foods from time to time, but do not make them a staple of your diet. And there you have it, 10 worst foods to avoid if you have an autoimmune disease. Now we would love to hear from you. Do you know other autoimmune disease food triggers that we did not discuss in the video? Let us know in the comments below. We value your insights and they can be a great source of additional knowledge for our community. We hope you found this video helpful. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more educational content. And if you like to show your gratitude, please consider sending us a super thanks and checking out our merchandise for some great finds. Your support allows us to continue creating informative content and spreading awareness about important health topics. Living with an autoimmune disease can be challenging, but the good news is that you are not powerless against them. Take charge of your health. Work with your doctor or dietitian to figure out what your triggers are. It may take some trial and error, but with time you should be able to figure out a diet that works for you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.